All right, so we are almost 5 minutes behind our start time, so let's go ahead and dive right in. As I said, my name is Mary. I am with Fairy God Boss, and we thank you all for joining us today with our guest, Ashley from the Fiscal Femme. We'll be learning 7 steps to get you on the road to financial wellness. Always a great refresher. Like I said, we're so pleased that you could join us. And as you may have seen when we were promoting the webinar, everyone who registered is eligible to win a copy of Ashley's book, which hits a bookstore near you in January. So we'll be announcing that winner at the end. You'll also see some different functions. Some of you have already used your raise your hand function. We also have Q&A function. So if you think of a question, we'll be going through all of those at the end. So please just pop them in. We'll also be doing some polling and different questions in the comments throughout the webinar. So be on the lookout for that. And without further ado, I want to introduce our guest of the hour, Ashley Feinstein-Gersley. She is out to end inequality through financial well-being, and we are so excited to have her here today. She's a mom, money coach, and founder of the Fiscal Femme and creator of the 30-Day Money Cleanse program, which has helped thousands of women cultivate harmonious relationships with money and achieve their financial goals using her fun and fresh approach that addresses both the numbers and our money mindset. She is a trusted money expert, and she's been featured by amazing publications, including Forbes, NBC, Glamour, and Business Insider. And without further ado, I am going to mute myself and turn it over to Ashley.
Thank you. Thank you for that wonderful intro, Mary. And hopefully everyone could hear you so they can hear me too. Let me know if you have any issues hearing me. I am so excited to take you through my 7 steps today, and we're going to make it interactive. So stay with us, and we're going to ask some fun questions after each step. As Mary mentioned, we believe financial wellness is the cornerstone of equality at the Fiscal Femme. So it is a mission that drives me every day and makes me excited to do what I do. And to me, it means getting women paid what they're worth, investing in women-owned businesses, and getting women leaders on boards and management teams. And I could talk about this for a long time, but basically when women are wealthy, it will save the world. So that's what I'm out to do, is make all of you wealthy. Me, a little bit about me. I started the Fiscal Femme because I needed it myself. I was a finance major in college and then worked in finance as an investment banker and in corporate finance. So much finance background, yet I knew nothing about my own money. And I thought, if I don't know about this, who does? And I found that really no one does. So quick poll, because I've made mistakes in every area of my personal finances, and if you have wine and many hours, I'm happy to share some of those. One of the highlights was losing thousands of dollars, which is a large portion of my savings, because I took a coworker's investment advice, and he just sounded so confident, and I found out he had no idea what he was talking about. But through my work, I found that that experience is not unique at all, and that we're all struggling with money in one way or another, and we just don't realize it because it's something that we don't talk about. It's taboo, and it's also something we don't learn about. So we're really not set up for success in many, many ways. So quick poll or raise of hand, who wishes they knew more about personal finance or thinks they should know more about personal finance or their money? And then who has made a financial mistake? Cool. Mary, I can't see the...
Oh, yeah, we have lots of folks raising their hands.
Lots of hand raises. Okay, cool.
We are all in the same boat together.
Yeah, and I like starting off that way because I don't think we realize it. Because it's something we don't talk about, we end up feeling very alone in this. So then I love quotes, and I just want to take you through one of my favorites before we dive into the steps. Our degree of resistance around money is proportional to the degree of power available to us on the other side of that resistance. And that's a quote by Barbara Stanny. She wrote an amazing book called Overcoming Under-Earning. And the reason I like to start with this is we often don't want to deal with our finances. So pat on the back, celebration for anyone who's joining, because that's the hardest part. And the more we don't want to look at it, the more we have to gain from looking at it or from tackling it. So I think any moment where you're feeling resistance around money or not wanting to face it, just remember this quote, because the more you don't want to, the more you actually have to get from it. Okay, so now we're diving into the steps. Step 1 is to get conscious. And it sounds very simple, but most of us have no idea where our money's going. Like, no idea. And we have a tendency to not want to know. We talked about our not wanting to look at it. So imagine ostriches with our head in the sand. But technology also makes it really easy to have no idea. We hop in and out of Ubers without paying. We hit a button and a box shows up at our door. There are just so many. We swipe a credit card, and that feels so different than paying in cash, right? Swiping for $200 versus handing over all of those 20s feels very different. So it sounds very simple, but one of the most transformative things we can do for our financial lives is to get conscious by keeping a money journal. And this is where you write down or type out everything that you spend and earn. Make it easy on yourself. And this is a theme you'll see with me over and over, is we have this idea that being good with our finances is going to be difficult or hard, and it doesn't have to be. So if you're the kind of person who has a journal and maybe you're taking notes right now physically, then that might mean that you should keep your money journal in an actual notebook. Or if you always have your phone with you, keep it in notes on your phone, or you can use an app as long as it makes you manually add in the expense rather than sync up automatically. So make it easy. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to make mistakes with our money journal. It's a new habit. I think one of the biggest mistakes that we make in our financial lives, and really in our lives in general, is that we give up on ourselves as soon as we make a mistake. So be forgiving of yourself in this journey. We have a lot working against us. It takes time to build new habits. So if you forget to keep your money journal, pick up where you left off and try to remember what you missed, but then go from there. And kind of similar to the quote that I mentioned, the more you don't want to do this, the more you have to gain from doing it. So if this step sounds horrible, then it might be the perfect step for you. And in this example, we have lunch. The price is $15. And then if you want, I would start simple and just do the item and the price. But as you get in the habit of keeping your money journal, you can add in how you feel before and after you make the expense. So in this case, before I bought lunch, I was feeling hungry, I was feeling tired, or hungry, bored, and needed a break. And then after, I was feeling happy, or maybe I was feeling satisfied with that lunch, or feeling guilty, or like, wow, that wasn't worth it at all. So just interesting to note how you feel before and after each expense.
Great. And we're going to do a quick poll on that while Ashley wraps up this slide. I'm just going to launch it about if you have ever kept a money journal.
Awesome. I'm going to do the poll too. So the step here is to write down everything you spent and earned for 1 month. And what I'm going to have you do as I go through, I'm going through 7 steps. Keep in the back of your mind which ones sound good or like something that you want to try, because I'm going to ask that you take one of these steps within the next 48 hours. Just one of them. So think about which one as I go through.
Awesome. Lots of people weighing in on our poll. Most people have not kept a money journal. And as someone who does it and practices it actively, it is very helpful.
And it sounds very simple, but I think magical things happen when we become aware, because so much of what we spend, might not even know we're spending it, or we're doing it because other people are doing it, and it's not even adding value to our lives. So different things show up for different people when they keep the money journal, but it's always an exercise that I think is worth the time.
Definitely.
Awesome. All right. I think I was in the poll. Step 2 is to look at the big picture. And this is a very eye-opening exercise too. And what I mean by the big picture is to take an annual look. And what I found, a lot of people are laying out their expenses weekly or monthly, but not looking at the full year. And why this is important, the first reason is that we want to see what the real impact of our expenses. In this example below, someone might not realize that their $15 lunch could be the dream vacation that they want to take if they just reallocated it. So when we look at the annual look, take the annual look, we see where our money's going and if it's going where we want it to go. And then also there are things that don't happen on a regular basis in our lives. We're coming up on one right now. Holidays, they happen every single year, but when we're mapping out our monthly or our weekly spend, we're not taking into account extra spending that happens for holidays or travel or even haircuts. Like if they don't happen that often, they can really throw off a plan. So the exercise here, the action item, is to list out each of your daily, weekly, monthly, annual, and one-time expenses and see what they look like annually. And in this example, we have lunch again to keep the lunch example going. The price is $15. And let's say we have that same lunch 5 days a week, 48 weeks a year. So we're taking 4 weeks of vacation. So we are only working 48 weeks. And that's 240 lunches, which adds up to $3,600. Now, there are 2 other columns here that you can play around with. You can play around with changing the price of the item. So in this case, let's say I was able to find lunch for $10 after doing a little research. And then I decide I'm going to bring my lunch twice a week. So I'm only going to spend buying my lunch out 3 times a week. So that changes it. Now I'm only buying lunch 144 times. So the total annual spend is $1,440. And that looks very different from $3,600. So we can play around with this. And I'm not going to lie, this is a very big task because we're looking at all of our expenses. If it feels very daunting, start with a few that you're curious about, because oftentimes, our rent is our rent, but looking at it annually is very helpful. But some of the more daily, non-bill-like expenses can be very eye-opening. All right, Mary, what's our poll here?
Here is a question that we'll need everyone to weigh in on the comments. So after looking at this, what do you think? Does this make sense? Is this shocking to you? What's easy for you? And we'd love to hear your thoughts in the chat function if you just want to weigh in.
Oh yeah, so basically the exercise here, pick an item and calculate what it is annually. And just take a minute to do that. And then the poll is, does it look how you thought it looked? So, that makes sense. I spend $3,600 on lunch. Or what? I had no idea I spent $3,600 on lunch.
I recently did this between my partner and I, and we had some shocking results when it comes to how much we spend on coffee. So you're totally right. Those little things add up. And as a result, I've invested in travel mugs and have bringing my coffee to work with me.
Amazing. Yeah, we're going to talk about, I had a similar experience with coffee.
It really adds up. You don't think about it.
I know. So as you're calculating a couple of your annual things,
someone let me know that our chat function is not working. So let me see if I can fix that for you guys. And if you want to go ahead and move on, Ashley, I can work on that in the back end. And thank you to the anonymous attendee who let us know.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so step 3 is one of my favorites. It is maximizing our joy per dollar. And I don't think we look at money in this way very often, but the point of having money is to have and experience what we want in life. So it's really about maximizing our joy per dollar. We only can use or spend $1 one time, no matter how much or how little money we have. So we want to allocate it in the way that's going to make us the happiest. So in this exercise, you're going to list the top 3 things that make you really happy. So go ahead and do that. List 3 things that make you super happy. And then on average, what does each cost? So if something that makes you really happy is going out to dinner with your friends, on average, what does that cost? Or if you love buying clothes, on average, what is an item that you purchase cost? And the thing that you want to make sure of here is that if you had more money, you can get more of this item. So a gym membership is really one of the only things that wouldn't work well with this, because if you had more money, you wouldn't want more gym memberships for the same gym, because it's not an added benefit. So you want to make sure it's something you can get more of if you have more money. And then if it's something that makes you really happy, this is your opportunity cost. So here we are uncovering the opportunity cost of our spending. And I'm going to explain what that does and why we do it in part 2 of this step. But just for now, I want to make sure everyone has their happy producing item that they're thinking of. Okay, so with your opportunity cost, you're going to test out some of your regular expenses. And I think the reason this step is really important, getting an alert. Oh, I think chat's working. Great. Okay. And the reason this is really important is because sometimes when we see what the annual number is, it's shocking. And sometimes it's like, well, I actually don't know what that means. Is it bad to spend that much on lunch? Do I want to be spending that much? And I think looking at it in terms of something really tangible that makes us happy is really helpful. So in this case, if my opportunity cost is travel, that's something that makes me really happy. And I want to see if it's worth it to me. So in the coffee example, and this was true for me at the time, I was getting coffee every day for $4.30. And I added that up and it was about $1,600 a year. When I saw that, I was like, wow, I would rather spend that money on something else. And I took a trip to Spain with my cousin. The cool part about this is when you look at your opportunity cost in terms of some of your regular expenses, you might decide, and it's totally okay, there's no right or wrong answer. You might decide, and I have a lot of clients who decide to keep their coffee. They're like, well, $1,600, that's really important to me. I want to prioritize that. Other people say, no way, I want to take a trip. I'd rather have 15 dinners with friends, whatever it is. And that's the cool part about it. It's about what's important to us, and it's helping us take an honest look. So we're allocating our money the way that works best for us. So this is not to make you feel bad or to make you feel like you should switch anything. It's really about you're taking an honest look. So the action item here is to look at each of your expenses in terms of your opportunity cost, and then decide, is that expense worth it to you? And I think we have a poll here.
We do. So our chat function should be working now. So if you feel comfortable, we would love for you to weigh in on what your opportunity cost is. And you should be able to have the option to chat anonymously if that makes you feel more comfortable as well.
Yeah, I've heard everything from massages to shopping to dinner to travel to gym classes. There's so many happy producing items.
Makes total sense. And I definitely think coffee is one of those that you spend so much money on. Oh, we're getting some chat. So too much money on cable for what they watch. I've definitely been there. No longer have cable as a result. Bar class and travel. I love those bar classes, but they're so expensive. And if you're, I think to your point, $1,500 would go a long way on bar classes.
Right. So for example, in the case of bar class, if that's something that makes you really happy and you want to spend, you could look at your lunch cost, your coffee in terms of how many bar classes that would get you.
Totally. Thanks everyone for weighing in.
Cool. She shed. That's a great one. All right. Pay yourself first. So the step here is to treat saving and investing like an expense. And how we typically save is pretty ironic. We get money, we earn money, and then we prioritize paying everyone else first. So we pay our bills, we live our life, we even buy gifts for other people, and then we sit and we wait and say, I hope there's money left over for me to save. And guess what? There's never any money left over to save. And then we think, oh, if I just earn more money, then I'll finally start saving. And for most of us, we earn more money and then we realize we're still not saving. And one of the reasons this happens is because of Parkinson's law. And it's this idea that things take up as much space as we give them. It's the reason our junk drawers get filled and are overflowing, our closets fill up, our calls take as much time as are allotted in the calendar, and our expenses fill up our bank account. So we have to use this to our advantage and get the money out of our accounts. And I think the stat is really, it's shocking for us, but it just is really telling. The average American at any age has less than $400 saved. So if they had an emergency expense come up, that's $400. They would have to put it on a card or borrow money from somebody. So how this system isn't working for any of us. And how we pay ourselves first is create a separate space for our savings. When we have our checking connected to our savings account, it's really easy to have that money feel available to us. And then it's just, we keep transferring it over and using it. It's very hard to keep money in our savings account. So we want to separate that out, and then we want to automate it so that after every paycheck, money goes there first, before we live our life, before we pay anybody else. And if you're feeling like most people, which, we're living paycheck to paycheck, then start with as little as $5 a paycheck. And what you'll find when you check in a few paychecks is that you didn't even miss it. And then you can up the ante and save some more. So in this example, I'm saving for my rainy day fund. I want it to be $15,000, and I'm going to have an automatic transfer for $200 per paycheck go to my savings account. And I think it's really important for it to go automatically, because that out of sight, out of mind takes the work out of it for us. So it's easy. And then also take note of when you will increase it, or when you'll check in at least on it. So if you're saving $200 a paycheck, let's say in 3 months, I'll set a calendar reminder and check in and see if I want to save more, or if that's not working, I want to save less. So the action item here is to decide how much and how often you'll contribute to each of your saving and investing goals, and then set it up to be automatic. And the poll here is, what's your number one top priority savings goal?
Yeah, we have some results coming in, and it looks like, bless you. Excuse me. Bless you. It looks like for the majority of people, a lot is credit card debt, followed by home and other.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm really glad to see student loans be a little bit lower with the crowd, because I feel like you're always reading that narrative about student loans. So
yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. So then the next step, and thank you for sharing, is to redefine your goals. And this is another really fun step that I love. So goals versus strategies. Here you're going to think about some things that you really want. And we often think about the things we want as our goals. So I want a car, I want a vacation, I want a jet. You can think big here. And then think about what this provides. What's the value or purpose of it? So if I really wanted to go on a beach vacation, what does that give me? Why do I want to go on that? Maybe I need some R&R. I want to feel pampered. So try to dig down into what that item or experience is providing you. So go ahead and do that. Some of the things you want, and then in the right column, what these things really provide you and why you want them. So the reframe, and this blew my mind when I realized this, is that it's actually the feeling or experience we're after. So it's that feeling of R&R, that feeling of being pampered, rather than the vacation that I'm after. So the vacation is my current strategy for getting that experience. But what's very liberating is that there are many other strategies for me to feel pampered and for me to get some R&R. So the goal here is the purpose or source of our want. And the strategies are the choices that are many that we have available to reach those goals. So just because it costs money to go on a vacation doesn't mean that that's not a strategy I can choose. But if, let's say, I want to put money towards a different goal, or I want to feel that pampering and that R&R more often than just once a year when I go on a vacation, I can brainstorm some ways that do not require money to have that experience. So the poll here is, I think it's something around sharing the feeling or experience.
Yeah, we'd love to know if you want to weigh in the chat, what some of the experience-based things you are after. And for me, it's always more vacations, more travel. And then also we had a question to go back so they could keep taking notes. Not to worry, we'll be sending out a recording of the webinar afterward. So you will get all of this information at your demand.
I love it. All right, so step number 6 is to create your happiness allocation. And I use the term or phrase happiness allocation instead of budget or spending plan because I think it's a much more fitting term because it's an honest look at what's going in and what's going out so we can use our money in the ways that will truly make us the happiest in the short and long term versus the word budget makes me feel like, ugh, they're like prying expenses from me, making me stay home and eat ramen to save money. And a happiness allocation, and it's very simple math. It's total inflows for the year minus how much you want to save for your goals because we're paying ourselves first. And that equals what's left for our lifestyle annually. And that's why when people say, and I hear it a lot, I'm bad at math, so I'm not good with my money, or numbers make my head spin. This is simple subtraction. And this is really the main equation that you need to be financially well. Your annual inflows, and by inflows, it's what actually hits your bank account, not your salary, because what you'll find is the number is very different. A lot comes out of our salaries before they hit our bank account. And then minus how much you want to save for your goals this year, and that's what's left for your lifestyle. And in all honesty, this equation will not look pretty at first, most likely, and that's okay. And I think the best part about seeing the equation is that once we know where we stand, we can do something about it and use a lot of the steps in 1 through 5 so far to help our equations look better. So the poll here is what sounds better, a happiness allocation or a budget?
We have results coming in, and overwhelmingly, happiness allocation is winning.
I did that. That's a fun one. I was hoping you would agree with me because I hate the word budget.
I do too.
Okay, great. And the last step, and remember, you're committing to take one in the next 48 hours. But this is one of my favorites. I guess I've said that for a few of them, but I love all of these steps. Number 7 is to have a money party. And this means we'll create the time to dedicate to our finances or show our money some love because we have jobs, we have busy lives, and we tend to put our financial to-dos on the back burner and not spend time with our money. And when you have a relationship with money, which we all do, like any other relationship, if you imagined that you treated your best friend the way you treat money, your best friend would probably be pretty pissed because we don't spend time with our money, and the time we do spend is often very stressful or nerve-wracking. So we want to put a recurring calendar reminder into our schedule so that we can spend time and have a money party. What we do in a money party is anything that comes up. So one-off things like, oh, I've meant to negotiate that fee away or cancel that subscription or roll over that IRA finally. And then also every week I recommend, or every 2 weeks when you have your money party, look at your spending. How did it look over the last 2 weeks? How are you doing as far as getting making progress on your savings goals? Do you want to change anything? Go in with an agenda so that it's not like, oh, I'm sitting down for my money party. Now what? It's very helpful to go in with a plan. And then I call it a party for a reason. We want to make it fun and reward ourselves. So some people put on music, have a glass of wine. If you drink alcohol during your money party, I recommend putting it towards the end, or most of the drinking towards the end, so that it doesn't affect finishing your money party. Be in your PJs, and then reward yourself. People go out with friends after, make it part of date night. One person that was at a workshop had the brilliant idea of only eating ice cream during their money party, and ice cream was their favorite food. So it made them very excited to have money parties every 2 weeks. So the step here is to set a calendar reminder for your money party, write an agenda. It can be tentative and you can add to it as things come up, and then decide how you're going to make it fun and how you will reward yourself for that money party. And it sounds silly, but we work really well with rewards.
Right. So if anyone wants to weigh in the chat, how are you going to make your money party fun?
And it's really fun to hear other people's ideas, just because there are so many different ways. I love that. Celebrating with a glass of wine.
Definitely. Oh, I love the wine and fave TV show pairing afterward. That sounds like fun.
Music. And what's cool about it is you might pick something, right? Any one of these examples. And if you have your money party and it's not fun, or you want to make it more fun, add another thing. So it's all about testing it out and experimenting and seeing what works. So just because it's not fun the first time doesn't mean you should give up. All right, awesome. And then the last step, which is not really a step, is to choose a step. And it's really important that we are specific. So the step is specific, but then by when are we going to do it? And I recommend the next 48 hours while you're feeling motivated. And accountability is so important. One of the biggest problems about not talking about money is that our best friends or family members don't know what we're trying to do. They don't know about our goals, so they can't help us. And often they're encouraging us to do things that actually take us further from our goals. Like, oh, that's the cutest outfit. You should buy it. Treat yourself. Get that next cocktail. If they knew that all you wanted is to get out of credit card debt and that would make you feel so great, they wouldn't be encouraging those things. So while it can feel daunting to share our money goals with our friends and family, sharing a step we're going to take and by when is a great way to start that conversation. And I call the people that we spend the most time with, the people that can really help us reach our goals, I call them our dream team. So think about somebody who you could just text and say, hey, I'm going to text you, and as soon as I complete this step, and it's going to be within the next 48 hours. I have an accountability buddy for meditation. It's my cousin. And a lot of times we text each other after we meditate each morning. And sometimes that's the only reason I do it, is because I want to text him and say that I did it. So it really works.
Awesome. Does anyone want to weigh in the comments with the one action that they're going to commit to? Some money parties. That's the fun one.
Yeah. And amazing. You can bring in the family, husbands, kids, even friends. I love it. That's awesome. And what's great about the money party is that's a great place to start, because that's a space to do so many other steps. Open an IRA. Awesome. Totally. Set up automatic savings. Yay. Okay. This is great.
Lots of good action items.
Lots of good action items. Definitely take them. And feel free to update us when you do, because I love hearing about all the successes. Financial to-do list. Amazing. Oh, this makes me so happy, all these steps. Okay. So we have a contest winner. I have a program that actually started in a few years ago, because when I was working with my clients, I saw that a lot of us were struggling with the same things over and over. It might manifest differently, but I created a program around that called the 30-Day Money Cleanse, and it is now coming out as a book, which I'm very excited about. And it has exercises, and it's beautifully designed with color and place to do the exercises in the book, and a lot of just really like my entire money philosophy is in there. And we did a raffle for everyone who signed up for the webinar, and we have a winner.
Yeah. So do you want me to announce the winner, or do you want to, Ashley?
No, go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Our winner, and I'm not sure if she's on, is Natalie Campbell. It's Natalie on. You can raise your hand if you are. All right. Our friend Natalie might not be on, so we'll contact her afterward to let her know she is the prize winner. And also, if we'll be opening it up to questions soon. So if you want to start, if you have any questions, you want to start inputting them, we can go ahead and start taking those.
Yes. And thank you for the compliments on the cover, and sad faces for not winning the book. I'm sorry, but you can pre-order it, and it would be awesome if you do. It comes out January 1st. And I can have in our follow-up email a link to purchase.
Yeah, absolutely. So while we wait for a few questions, I have a question for you, Ashley. You work with a ton of clients. You're a financial expert. What are some of the biggest takeaways or trends that you really see people struggle with that's kind of universal?
So many things. So I think cash flow is a big issue for a lot of people. And that just means we often have a lot of big expenses come out of one paycheck. And then, so that paycheck will feel very tight. And then we get our paycheck, and then we don't really have as many expenses in the next paycheck. So kind of how to smooth out our spending over the course of the year. Or, oh, my money feels great until I have to book a trip. And then I have a big expense that month, or the holidays. So I think cash flow is a big one I see. A lot of people struggle with credit cards, and just something I see often is we want to pay them down so bad, and I get it. And so what we do is we put everything we have towards the card, and then there's not enough money to live, so we have to put expenses back on our credit card.
Yeah. And what do you think is the right balance between, if you say you do have credit card debt, between tackling debt, creating savings in an emergency fund, because it's so important to have, and then also having money to like live your life?
Yeah. And so one thing, but I'll definitely answer that question too, that I see is that money and food, and that's the reason the money cleanse is kind of analogous to food, because we really punish ourselves around money, and we try to restrict ourselves into submission, and then we end up being in a battle with ourselves. If you can imagine, like the devil on one shoulder, the angel on the other, like, don't buy that, buy that. And I think a really important step is compassion and forgiveness for ourselves, so that we can get back on our own team and realize like what we want. If what I want most is to pay off my credit card debt, that's not punishing myself. That's like any savings towards that is actually something for me. So getting clear that we're on, it sounds weird, but on the same team as ourselves versus battling ourselves.
Yeah. That's really great advice.
And then as far as balancing life and credit cards and savings, it's definitely a balance, because there's always advice that's like technically. So for example, in deciding what to pay down first as far as credit cards, technically paying for the highest interest rate cards first will save you the most money. But what we don't want to forget is how important our motivation is and what works for us. So the snowball method, where you pay off the smallest amounts first, often is most motivating because we get to cross things off. And even though it technically saves more money to pay off the high interest cards, when we're motivated and more excited, now we're actually paying off more and more quickly. So I think it's always important to balance that and to take what technically is the smart thing to do with what will actually be motivating and work for us. But you definitely want to start building up a minimal amount of savings before completely focusing on credit cards. Because if something were to happen, then now you just have to put it on your credit cards again because there's no saving buffer.
Yeah, no, that's really great advice. Okay, we have a few other questions. One of our participants asked, is residual income covered in your book?
And what does that mean, residual income?
I don't know, maybe our Jody, who asked the question, maybe you could weigh in the chats what you mean. And then while you do that, we'll move on to the next question. So do you have any tips for improving your credit score? I hear a lot about number of credit cards you have open in your name. So what number is the sweet spot?
Great question. So there are some sites you can go on to. Credit Karma's free, and then my FICO, I think, is $32, and it will show you exactly where you stand as far as the different ways that are weighed into your credit score. So one of the biggest things for credit is on-time payments. And I want to say it's like 40% of our FICO score, but a very large percentage is having on-time payments. So you want to do that. And if you don't, it takes time for those blemishes, quote unquote blemishes, to come off. And there are ways you can get them off and negotiate. And then another larger portion of our score is our credit utilization rate. And that is essentially how much credit we're using. So if our limit is $2,000, and every month and it doesn't matter if we pay it off in full, it matters when they check. So when the credit agency checks and you have $1,950 outstanding on your credit card with a limit of $2,000, they see that as a really high utilization rate. And that would make your score be lower. So there are different ways to do it. If it won't affect how much you spend, you can negotiate your credit limits up, but only if you won't be spending anymore. Otherwise, you can pay off your credit card in more frequent increments, so it never gets to that high percentage, so that when they check, that utilization is lower. And then definitely so your credit history, the average age of your accounts is in there. It's not as much how many credit cards, it's more how many are recently opened. So if you have a bunch of credit cards that were recently opened, there might be this view that, oh, you're overextended because you've just opened all these credit cards.
Great. We have someone else who would like to know if you would recommend using cash only for some time for our money consciousness.
Definitely. So that is something that I have people try out in the money cleanse. For most of us, it makes us more conscious, and it increases our pain of paying, which is good because we want to have a little pain when we pay if we are looking to spend less. There are a few people, and I would say it's a very small number in the population, that actually spend cash more quickly than credit, because once the cash is out of their account, it kind of feels like monopoly money. But I would say if that's you, definitely don't try it. But for most of us, it would make us more conscious. And you can do, in the money cleanse, I have people not mess with any of their bills that are their rent, but for the everyday expenses, just try out, okay, I want to spend $50 when I go out tonight. That's what I'm going to bring with me, and see how that goes.
Great. Next question. What are some creative ways to have, quote, money free? So I'm going to guess that means probably just being more liquid.
So creative ways to spend less, maybe?
Yeah, I would say like having just money freed up, I guess.
Yeah. So what I found, and I call it either there's two terms that I use: fabulously frugal, which is this idea when we get creative and when we think about what's important to us about a situation, it's easy to let go of the things that are not important and make the experience or the thing more fabulous while decreasing the cost. So for example, if what you love is having dinner with friends, like really get clear what you love about it. Is it trying new restaurants? Is it just the quality time with your friends? Is it good wine? And if it is just the quality time, or if it's good wine, then you could actually drink better wine at home because there's a 4 times markup at restaurants. So different ways to be creative in keeping the things that are important, but letting go of the things that aren't. So maybe if it's getting a big group together, you decide to have a potluck, or if you love trying new places, maybe it's a game to try new places that have entrees under a certain amount. So I would say being fabulously frugal, and it's fun to brainstorm that with friends, because some people, let's say what's important to me about something might be different than what's important to my husband about the same experience. So we want to make sure that everyone is getting what they want out of the experience. And then the other thing I love are frugal joys. And these are free or inexpensive things that make us happy. And we can add a limited number of them to our lives because they don't really increase or spend that much. So thinking about kind of the little things, if it's a bubble bath, if it's watching your favorite TV show on Netflix, if it's having a big mug of tea, thinking about things like little life joys that make us happy. And I think for a lot of people I work with, and myself included, we're like, what do we even like to do? We're so on the go. And it's, so I think it's a really good practice to say, what brings me joy? How do I pamper myself? And what can I do that doesn't necessarily cost a lot of money?
Yeah, I love that, to think about those creative ways that you can have a really great time that is either free or very little cost. And I think particularly in a lot of cities, there's always free activities going on. So,
and the cool part, it doesn't mean you have to replace the things that you're spending on. You could even just add a bunch of these and make your life even better.
Totally. Cool. So I think we have time for one more question. And someone would like to know, Ashley, if you have any recommendation for a good first step if you want to start investing in building.
Yeah. So that's a very good question. And investing is a whole other webinar or series of webinars. I have a course called the Savvy Investor course. That's 3 months, just to give you an idea of how much there is to unpack there. But I think the most important thing is starting. And you can read so many books and articles, and there's so much information out there that you can get stuck in analysis paralysis. And the key is starting, and we learn best by doing. So I honestly would open up a brokerage account and decide I'm going to learn with this amount of money, or like you can start with as little as $250 and purchase a share of an index fund for that experience to learn. Or you could use an app like a robo-advisor to have you take you along that process. But I would say break it up into small steps and just start.
That's great. Great. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. And thank you to Ashley, the Fiscal Femme, for presenting this great information. I know I learned a lot and hope you all did too. We'll be in touch with follow-up information. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to respond to your webinar reminders, and you can contact me, Mary, directly. And thank you all again for joining us.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for the great questions.
Yes, very good questions. All right. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their Thursdays. Bye.
Bye.